Salika Grammar School, Ward High School, went on to Tennessee State, finished postgraduate work at the University of Nebraska. And I first learned about the conflict in Korea, I guess the way everyone learned about the conflict in Korea, from the radio. I was in the Army, the Military Police Corps, and retired as a lieutenant colonel. How old was I when I entered military service? 20. Training, well, I guess I trained more than I actually served while I was in the Army. Always going to some school or another. Military training is outstanding, the best anywhere. In fact, I would say the best training in the world is the U.S. Army parachute training. That's 3 weeks of training. It's undoubtedly the best training in the world. All military training is just well conducted and get the job done and make a fighting machine or whatever out of an individual. Good training. What was my understanding of communism? I hate it, and I still do. It's that simple. Did I understand them? They were heartless, little or no respect for human life, no respect for human dignity. And I was in Korea after the hostilities, of course. I landed, I guess, in China. What were my impressions of the enemy? I didn't see much of the enemy. Living conditions were very primitive. When I arrived there, of course, after the war, we did have community sleeping tents called Tent GP Large, large general purpose tents that accommodate maybe 20 soldiers, and had a little pot-belly stove at each one of them, gasoline fired, motor type gasoline. You're always having to change the 5-gallon gas can, and a little bit dangerous. There were some fires as a result of that. A canvas tent is just not the best protection when the weather gets down to close to zero and the humidity is but they did their best, and of course every day the accommodations got better. War was over, so they could do things like wall up hospitals and that sort of thing, and they got the highest priority, of course. And then the Quonset huts started arriving, and boy, were you happy when you got Quonset hut. Of course, at that time I was an infantry lieutenant. All specialist officers in the military police corps especially, were required to do a combat arm tour. My combat arm tour was in the infantry. So I was an infantryman in Korea. And at the time we were still in frontline foxhole, 24-hour alert. And I think I may have come, no, I guess I'm not coming yet. Describe a typical day for you while you're in Korea. Well, typical day was doing your thing, whatever your thing was. Training. For a while, I was a communications platoon leader. So we worked at putting up telephone lines and establishing radio contacts and putting up the retransmission, all the things to do with communications at a battalion level. And incidentally, I was in the 2nd Battalion, 32nd Infantry Regiment, 7th Infantry Division. And we were stationed at Camp Casey, Camp Hovey, which was nearby, 600 miles away. It was where the division headquarters was. Our regimental headquarters was nearby. We were in what is called camp, and it was called camp because that's where the mess halls were, and we had a flagpole. So, it was a camp. Off-duty recreation. And we had practically none. It was a while before they got into nice things like a library. In fact, we didn't, when I was first there, we didn't even have an Armed Forces Expeditionary radio station that we could pick up on the radio. There was very little time for recreation because we didn't have a 12-hour or 8-hour day or 40-hour week as unheard of. And you were on alert at least 50% of the time. And buddy, you stayed alert. And so the rest of the time you just needed to get your gear taken care of, get your laundry done, do your laundry. Later on we had some young Koreans who came in as sort of, we call them houseboys. There were no houses, but we call them houseboys. They would do our laundry for us. And there just wasn't any time for recreation. It was just that simple. When you did have a little while, somebody dragged out a deck of cards, and you'd go at it playing.
Since you spoke of the houseboys, can I get back up and ask, because I've gotten several different impressions of this question. What do you think of the South Korean people in general?
Well, I had many more tours in Korea. I was in criminal investigation, command of criminal investigation. And the units I was with would go where the most crime was in the military, by and against military personnel and property. An awful lot of that was in Korea because of predator conditions, and so I spent a lot of time in Korea. And I have tremendous respect for the Korean people. Tremendous respect. And they're different from all the other Orientals. You can tell a Korean. One way I like to describe it is that whatever a Korean does, he becomes the best in the world. Now, I was a military police officer all my other tours there, except right immediately after the war, and in criminal investigation most of the time. But the ones that I dealt with were crooks, criminals. But they were the best in the world. Whatever they did, the best in the world. Fastidiously clean people. Even to today, they cannot pass a water source without washing their hands and face. In those days, most of the water sources were potholes in the road, and the water was muddy. Wash off their hands, wash off their face. Run the water through their hair, just fastidiously clean people. I don't know hardly how to say this without getting in trouble with the State Department or the Korean government, but it just seems like the Koreans kept their best people there. During the time I'm talking about, and this is pre-1970, 1950 to 1970, when I was spending time there. The only people that let leave the country were those that get a 4-year visa, come here and get an education. Then they had to come back to Korea and apply that education. The same was true of the girls that got permission to marry American soldiers, Australian soldiers, Ethiopian soldiers, any of the soldiers that happened to be there. If there was anything, the least little derogatory information in their background, they weren't allowed to marry a foreigner. And of course, some of it was health-related, like if they had tuberculosis, history of TB in the family. If they had ever been involved in the ministry or anything like that, they were important to Korea. And Korea kept them. And so as a result, during that period of time, now we're talking 30 years ago, 50 to 30 years ago, the period that I spent there, we were not seeing in America the better class of Koreans, the better educated, those with cultural backgrounds. They just didn't allow them to leave, stay there and take advantage of their skills while they're rebuilding the country. That may not be true today, I don't know. But the average American's view of Koreans, at least during that period, 30 years ago, was based upon not seeing the high quality individuals, the better educated, that sort of thing. So, my opinion, it might be slightly different from everybody, but I have a very abiding respect for Korean people. Suffer, those people suffer. Oh, they suffer. Industrious people. And percentage-wise, possibly the most honest people I've ever met. Way ahead of Americans. And they got their crooks. They were good. And they'd try to steal you blind. Some of them would, but percentage-wise, that was the vast minority. Honest people. Devoted to family. Well, I could go on and on and on. Koreans are great people. Very interesting. And I suspect that doesn't exactly coincide with some of the things you've heard.
No, but I probably don't know. The people I've been interviewing, for the most part, haven't had.
I'm gonna have to ask you to come back and finish this because I have another appointment and I see they just arrived.
That's no problem at all.
It's gonna take a while.
That'll be
And
no
some
problem.
of these later questions I'm gonna really enjoy talking about.
Okay. So that won't be no problem. So, were you well prepared for the kind of situations that, did they train you well for the kind of situations that you encountered?
No. When I got there, Korea was utterly devastating. I mean, there was absolutely nothing. I can remember conversations I would have with people coffee, and they'd be anxious to drive over to Wejeonbu because there was a tree in Wejeonbu. One tree. It was the only tree apparently was left in the entire country. Pieces of a couple of buildings and so. As I understand, one of them was a hotel owned by the wife of the president. For some reason, it's survived the entire war. But it's total, absolute devastation. It's like going to the moon. You know, like, there's no way you can be prepared for that. And no dwellings. The dwellings were made of cardboard, whatever they could scavenge from somewhere. A piece of plywood here and there, mostly cardboard, made out of, if they could find a twig, you know, anything the building. There was just nothing left in Korea. I've never seen such a wasteland, never even conceived such a wasteland. So, no, I wasn't.
What areas of Korea were you stationed in, or did you see? Were any of them stand out in your memory or something like that?
Yeah. At one point in time, our regiment was assigned to Theater Reserve. Well, that's as far back as you can get, you know, Theater Reserve. You've got a battalion reserve, you've got a regimental reserve, and a division reserve, each one progressively further back. We were Theater Reserve. And all the way down in Tucson. Tucson was, well, eventually it became a resort. Tucson and Hyundai. Way away from the 38th parallel on the Yalu River. And there'd only been one fight over this land a half a dozen times each direction. And the weather was nice, and of course the sea was there, you got a nice vista of the ocean. That was pretty nice. But the little village, Tongdu Shan Me, N-I means small village. Tongdu Shan village. Was easily identifiable. There was a smokestack, a brick smokestack, maybe 4 or 5 stories tall. And somehow it had managed to survive the war. Nothing around it had, but smokestack was standing there in the little village of Torrey, Sean. And then, of course, I spent time at the 38th Parallel. As the units, the regiments would rotate in there, we would go up and go alert on the 38th Parallel. So I got to see an awful lot of geography.
How did you feel about the leadership of your unit?
Well, I thought our leadership was quite excellent. We only had 2 battalion commanders while I was there, each one for about half the platoon. One replaced the other. And both of them had just graduated from Army's Command General Staff College. And they had all the book knowledge necessary to go with the experience that was necessary and the people skills that were necessary. Well, I was a brand new lieutenant, an impression. I was really pleased with the leadership that I had.
Were you in on this next question deals with the desegregation of the Army and how it was during Korea, the first time it really started. Were you in an all-white unit?
No.
If not, describe how the soldiers reacted to the desegregation of the military.
You know, it's sort of like here at Transylvania County. It just happened and nobody seemed to have noticed it. I never, to my knowledge, I never heard the term desegregated. I never saw an all-white unit. I never saw an all-black unit. The Army, it was just desegregated. You know, that was the Army I went in in the early 1950s. It had been desegregated. It was just a way of life. I had my units, blacks, Hispanics. Had a Greek boy. The funny thing, his name was Bianchi, Greek. And being at the first of the alphabet, his name was first on every duty roster that come up. Guard duty, KP duty, Bianchi. So he officially changed his name to White. I guess Bianchi is the Greek word for white. And so for the whole year he was there, his name was White. And so he's down at the bottom. He doesn't catch KP as often, but he doesn't get guard duty as often. And then shortly before he left, he was getting out of the Army. He changed his name back to Bianchi to go back to civilian life. He was a great boy. But we had mixtures of all. And I never noticed it. And maybe you're not sensitive. But the Army just seemed to be colorblind. Well, just colorblind. I didn't know I was white. The other guy was black. And just the soldiers were there. But I think wartime, of course, post-war, more stress, more dependence upon each other. You know, I mean, you've got to be able to depend on the guy on the left and the guy on the right. Probably a little bit closer to comradeship, maybe let's say the Army 10 years after a war experience, garrison time. No, never heard the word.
What did you think of the medical care that you received or witnessed?
Well, I thought it was superb. I thought it was better than the medical care we got in Vietnam. And I'm not putting down the medical care we got in Vietnam because it was quite outstanding. And of course, much of it state of the art. I lost an eardrum in Vietnam and treated for a period of 6 weeks for that. It was quite excellent treatment. But in Korea, we had more. We seemed to have enough. We had more medics. We had more corpsmen. We had more doctors. We had more dentists. We had more nurses. You know, we had more people that were involved in medical treatment. So I think the standards, even though they're primitive, but they were not as up to date and not state of the art as they were in Vietnam. I thought the degree of personal care was
What were the most common health problems that you witnessed? And this, the way the question is kind of oriented, so it can cover the grounds from, I guess, diseases and stuff, and all the way to, doing my research for this, I've read about the cold weather boots and how when they came in, how they were such a disaster for the soldiers because they said their foot never dried, their foot got soaking wet and it froze. And so I guess that whole spectrum. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, of course, early on we had just leather boots. We didn't have old rubber boots. We call them Mickey Mouse boots because when you put them on, your feet look like Mickey Mouse. And unless you had an opportunity to take them off and get your feet dry and dry off the inside of the boot, then your feet did stay wet for long periods of time. And so you look kind of like a prune. But I'll be honest with you, the sickness, non-injury type medical problems was from the darn malaria pill we had to take. We had to take malaria pill. And of course, one of the side effects, and they did a good job of preventing malaria, but you kept diarrhea all the time. Then people go to great lengths to avoid taking their malaria pill. We had to, there were times when we had to sign a roster that we had observed these 10 soldiers take their malaria pill. They did cause diarrhea. But I never saw anybody that had a problem with any indigenous diseases. Like there's a lot of tuberculosis. There's even some leprosy. But I never knew of a soldier that came out of any the medical problems that the indigenous people had. Didn't see it.
Overall, rate the morale of your unit.
Well, the first place personally, I don't think morale exists. I don't think there is such a thing. But everybody else in the military thinks morale exists and is important, and you rate the morale of every unit, and you rate the morale of every soldier. I don't know how to answer the question because we seem like most people were very upbeat with the opportunity to serve. But like everyone else, we counted the days. We knew exactly how many. That was preoccupied your thinking. How many days until I'm out of here? Anxious to get home. And we'd give parties when we got down to 180 days. Boy, he's a short timer. He's got 180 days to go. And you knew exactly how many days you had to go before you rotated. If that's indicative of poor morale, maybe we have poor morale. Things were different in the early 1950s. People were eager to serve. You wanted to serve your country. You wanted to defend freedom's frontier. You wanted to defend our way of life. You wanted to defend our form of government. You felt an obligation. I did, and most everybody I knew. This is the thing to do. It's so much different than the Vietnam War. There's not a lot of people chose not to do that. They call themselves, I don't know what they call them. I call them cowards, of course. But we didn't have any of those people in Vietnam. I never saw one that attempted to evade military service in the Korean War shortly after. Just different people. That's the thing to do. Well, that's high, but we're all anxious to get home.
Were you ever directly involved in any combat?
There was some isolated sniper fire, and there were threats, and there was psychological. They open up their loudspeakers and they threaten, all this sort of thing. That's Chinese communist stuff. But as far as me seeing an enemy and shooting at an enemy and watching an enemy shoot at me, no, I didn't even see it.
What was your opinion of the weapons you were trained with, and or issued or were issued while you were in service, and were they reliable?
In one life, that's what the infantry had. It was the most reliable weapon that's ever been designed. And it lasted long after the Korean War. We've had that weapon for years and years and years and years. It's very reliable. It's easy to train a soldier how to take it apart and clean it properly and get it back together and not affect the operating characteristics. Officers, most of them carried the 45 pistol, 45 caliber pistol, not just the ones the Army had, but all of them. It was a very reliable weapon if thrown by hand. You couldn't hit things shooting at it. It was very inaccurate, ranges above 5 feet, but you could throw it accurately, and you could really hurt somebody if you get hit with it. It's a sensitive spot. And infantry lieutenants carried a carbine, infantry carbine, which was, again, didn't have the range that you get more than that, which is basically a 30-06, and the carbine was basically a 30-30. They're similar to it. Very reliable weapon. In fact, I had been on the committee as a corporal. I had one of the carbine committee with Fort Jackson. Loved that. And out to range of 7,500 yards is very, very accurate. And have enough fuel. And then you can get the job. And those are three basic weapons I know about. I don't know about tank weapons. I don't know about artillery weapons. Handheld weapons, and I'm most familiar with. They did the job with the exception of
What do you think about the quality of leadership? And this, we had a guy from Tennessee come, Dr. Taylor, who's kind of the head of the committee of Society of War, and he just described us in trying to get, like, who are the real leaders, the officers, the NCOs, and the enlisted men. Because he came up with instances in his research where I guess people answered that question as some officers and NCOs and enlisted. Most of the people I've interviewed follow.
Well, you know, you talk to NCOs, and they believe that the NCOs, non-commissioned officers, are the real leaders in the Army, and to a great degree that's true. Because they're the people that are out there supervising the kids on the front line. They say, you dig your hole right here, and you place your machine gun there, and this is your field of fire, and that sort of thing. So they're the ones with hands-on leadership. If you talk to enlisted men, they're probably feel stronger, but they're the leaders, and case can be made for that, because they're the guys that are actually getting it done. They're the men who are joining with the unit on your right. You know, they get the leftmost guy from that unit, the rightmost guy from this unit, and you establish a link between two units moving forward. They're the ones that do it. They're the ones that are stopping the penetration of the patrols that are coming at you, final protective fires, that sort of thing. So there's something to be said for that. And you have to look at leadership a little bit differently. The general who never gets his uniform dirty can be a good leader if the only thing he does is he takes his $200 slider stick and makes a move across a large map and says, move the regiments here. If the thought that's gone into that makes that a brilliant move, he's a good leader. If it doesn't, he's good. He'll lead just like the guys that are out there slugging it out with the other. I think the best leaders that I saw were the lieutenants, the platoon leaders, the first level officer leadership. And they were good, really good. And especially good for those that were officers, and the ones that had gone to ROTC and received a commission after 4 years of college, they began to compete real competitive with the OCS. So here you're talking more about preparing staff studies and this sort of thing. When you get up to about major, then the West Point officers clearly are better than any other kind of officer. And they're drilled in not just tactics and where to put the machine gun, but the strategy involved in developing tactics. So we find those degrees of leadership, but I found that the earliest lines of leadership, well, I was pleased and I was happy, and I cannot remember one instance where I was concerned about leadership and being on the right or left. They're going to bug out, and somebody's going to get behind you, and I don't want behind you. Never had a concern with that. Well, as I said, brand new second lieutenant, I wouldn't have been afraid to say, hey, that guy's going to bug out if things get bad. Never had that. Never was very well satisfied with the NCO. Good sergeants. By the time that I got with war, theoretical soldier, tell the Chinese communist stuff. Most of the non-commissioned officers who had volunteered for that duty, they wanted to be in these frontline units. And so they were superb soldiers. They were the best we had. They were pretty prop. And so they're coming back because this is the real challenge of leadership. Combat or short-range post-combat situation. Good leadership. I saw some battlefield commissions too. Where a private would be a private one day and be a lieutenant the next. Without exception, those were private leaders, the lieutenants. Because you didn't let, they didn't just have these little bars in a bushel basket and pass them out. You had to earn those battlefield commissions. You earned it by something kind of leadership that the United States Army was looking for. And what's that was recognize an individual who was awarded national leader. I'd go to him anytime and anywhere.
Did you ever hear about any violence directed against officers?
I heard of some, and you hear rumors of that. I don't know, K-N-O-W, quotes. I don't know that any of it ever happened. I heard more of it in Vietnam, and again, I don't know that any of it ever happened. But you hear all these rumors. The lieutenant better not turn his back, this sort of thing. But I can tell you what I did not hear. I never heard anybody going to a court martial for that offense. I don't think any of it happened. If anything like that had happened, well, certainly there would have been a court martial. Even under the most severe wartime conditions, there would have been a court martial. So I think most of that is just, plus, whoever wrote that question wasn't a combat leader in the 50s. He may be knowledgeable of combat in the 60s or the 70s when things are different. But we're talking about the 50s here. Your company leadership was just an extension of mother and dad. People that were there, it wouldn't have occurred to them to disobey mother and dad or strike mother and dad. Now they've moved a step on, they're in the Army. It wouldn't occur to them in those days to disobey an order from a sergeant, or a corporal, or a lieutenant, or a general, or anybody. Nor would it have occurred to them to lash out at or strike or even quarrel with a leader. Because that was just not the kind of people that were there. We're the guys in formative years were in the 30s, during and right after the Depression. All of the values, that you hold dear and so. So that didn't occur in Korea. And whoever framed that question was framing it, a frame of reference years and years and years later. just wasn't a factor. They didn't have it.
What was the discipline like in your unit? I guess it's sort of like that morale question.
Intense, severe. But a great deal of it, and I don't want to put a percentage, whether it's 30 or whether it's 70, but most of the discipline was self-imposed discipline. Because that's the way we grew up. You know, we're farm boys, we're poor farm boys that get in the army and end up in Korea. And I remember we were like 20 years old at that time. So you were born in 1930, and that's back in the time where we had these strong family values, where you were disciplined. And so an awful lot of that self-imposed discipline. But the discipline that was imposed upon us was strict. We had strict rules. You obeyed them. The sergeants made darn sure you obeyed them. So it was strong. I don't want to use the term severe because it was never severe or corporal or anything like that, you know. But we were disciplined, really, but most of it, I say, self-imposed. As that contrast with the Vietnam War. But it contrasts because the type of person who's 20 years old is having those two different ages, completely different things.
This next question, I'm just going to ask it. You might not relate any. In the light of the recent information about No Gun 3, in which it was reported that officers ordered the killings of civilians, did you hear of any such orders or anything that was like that?
No. Now, I'm knowledgeable of that. I read every word that I could read of that. Every magazine article, every newspaper article. I tried to catch everything on television news that I could because it was vitally important to me. It would have been a black mark on the entire era that I was completely unaware of. My initial reaction, ain't no way that could have ever happened. Just no way. But apparently something untoward did happen. But it's like the lieutenant that was court-martialed in Vietnam. Somebody evaluated the situation, made a decision. That decision was flawed. If that occurred in Korea, as reported, the same thing applies. Someone evaluated the situation, came to a conclusion, made a decision. The decision was flawed. In that same day, 50,000 decisions were made in the Army in Korea. 49,999 of them were not flawed. That one was. And it should not be taken in a context beyond that. Hey, it was wrong. Folks did it. Bad, wrong. They'll suffer some and the good Lord punish them too. But it was so isolated as not to deserve major consideration. In spite of the attention that it attracted from the media.
To your knowledge, or you already answered that part of it. Well, I guess elaborate a little bit on the communist Chinese, since you've said some things on them. This next question is deals with the fighting of the Chinese, the communist Chinese. Do you have any comment on them, or you made a few comments?
Well, I kind of hate to because my feelings toward them may not be mainstream. But I hate them. I hate them viciously. I hate them. And I know hate's something hard not to heart. The Chinese communists entered both Vietnam and Korea and Vietnam when our enemy needed help. And so they came in and they fought us. Just an example of their tactics. They come at U.S. forces in waves, 1, 2, 3, 4, first period of line had everything that a soldier needs. They had complete uniform, boots, helmet, weapon, ammunition, first aid supplies, water canteen, food. They had everything a soldier could need. The second line had everything that a soldier needed except a weapon. And the theory is you pick up a weapon off of a dead comrade. So they don't even equip that second line of soldiers with a weapon. They're prey to our final protective fires. They can't even shoot back until one of their buddies gets killed and they take their weapon. Then the third line would not have any weapon or ammunition. Theory is they're going to take it off of a dead comrade. And so then when you get back to this last line, they don't have anything but their underwear practically, and they scrounge everything they can off of dead comrades. That in itself is bad enough. We can't stomach that. But I also use their dead comrades. We put up with concertina fences, razor wire concertina fences. And no human being can get to. I mean, you can't even put your hand near it without some awful stuff. We put it 3 deep. These rolls are like 4 feet in diameter. We put 2 in and 1 on top. They'd take these dead comrades, throw them on the concertina where they use it for bridges, and actually walk across the bodies of their fallen comrades to get into the U.S. zone. And they weren't all dead. You'd hear these horrible shrieks of these soldiers that were wounded, but not yet dead. And they were thrown on the concertina to create a bridge for the later waves to walk across. And now that's inhuman. And that's standard procedure in that. It's also standard procedure in that arena. If the United States or non-communist is getting the best of somebody, they're going to war with us. We keep forgetting that. We want to give them favored nation and trading status and all that. We forget how vicious, mean, evil those people were and will be again if there's ever a combat involving a communist country. Communist China can be expected to come in and gambling. And they're fighting us, the Northern. We treated the Indians bad enough in our own country. We treated our own Indians, our own Native Americans, far worse than we treat these Chinese communists that at every opportunity intercede on behalf of against us. So I've got a very warped perspective of the Chinese communists. I'm sure I'd be outvoted if you took 100 people. I may be one of 99 on the other side. And I have no tolerance on zero. But I fought them twice. One of those few that managed to fight them twice and survive. No, there is no good. No good. And I don't know what I'm talking about. Political leadership and military leadership. 80% of the soldiers. Notice these TV shows that they're on, parading down the street, handsome young men, beautiful women. They got a lot of money.
Next question, what were your feelings? Do you have any opinions about General MacArthur?